this country that are declining and declining badly. The continued health and prosperity of the city is by no means a given. It's something that has to be worked at and maintained. So, Charles?
Thank you. Well, we still don't have technical capabilities, so we should continue shuffling the panel. So let's do that. So, Adrian, yeah, we can try.
Hi everyone, my name's Adrian Parr and I have a joint appointment here at the University of Cincinnati, half in the Department of Women's, Gender and Sexuality Studies, the other half in the School of Architecture and Interior Design. And as you can tell probably from my accent, I'm not from here, I'm from Australia, and I've been living in Cincinnati now for around about 6 years. So I'm going to start from a position of ignorance. I think there's been a lot of specialists and experts in the fields of planning and have been involved in city government and so on and so forth that have spoken today in a much more informed manner than I possibly can give you today. So on that note, I'll start by saying that I'm sitting here before you today with no real vision of what development in Over-the-Rhine should be, should look like, feel like, smell like, or sound like. I can't offer you an assessment of what's been done to date because I simply don't know enough about it to provide an informed critical perspective. But as a philosopher, I can offer the speakers and the audience today at today's symposium an exercise in critical thinking. And I'm going to do this by posing 8 clusters of questions that pertain to the topic under discussion. The right to the city. That being a phrase first coined by Henri Lefebvre in 1968. 1. When we speak of a right to the city, whose rights are we speaking of? 2. Does this right include the city's beggars, homeless, the unemployed, illegal immigrants, women, children and elderly, the wildlife that inhabits the grass, skies and trees, the ecological flows that circulate above, below and in between the asphalt lining the urban landscape? 3. As we work to revitalise, rejuvenate and refurbish Over-the-Rhine, how does this process work and for whom? More pertinently, who benefits and who is excluded? 4. Will the urbanisation of poverty that's characterised Over-the-Rhine for such a long time now infuse a critical realism into the rejuvenation of that neighbourhood, one that aspires for poverty reduction, and not simply the return of the middle class to the city? 5. Will the development project dictate how public spaces are to be used, or will these areas be open to improvisation and varied uses? 6. Will the racialised lines of segregation that fragment the city of Cincinnati and the surrounding metropolitan area of Hamilton County continue to block the development of a reliable and extensive public transportation system that will not only help in the creation of livable neighbourhoods and a more environmentally conscious way of life, but would also be a key ingredient in creating a more equitable, diverse and inclusive city? 7. Will the Over-the-Rhine development provide the context for what Hannah Arendt so fittingly calls public freedom in her book on revolution? That being the freedom to participate and have a share in public power. Or will the development merely parody the trend of other urban developments the world over, which engineer the public life of cities to work to the pulse of consumption, production, and capital flows. 8. As we gather here today to optimistically celebrate the transformative potential of planning and design and our hopes for a more livable and equitable city in the future, how can we stop these political energies from being appropriated and co-opted? Too often, the vision for a livable city is tied to notions of safety. Jane Jacobs, for instance, succumbed to this very idea. And in turn, the goal of producing a safe urban space ends up facilitating the production of defensible space, such that all the optimism for design to produce change comes the basis for designing out crime. So basically, what's important, I feel, in all of this is that the right to the city is not just the right to shelter and to be able to meet our basic needs. But as Lefebvre pointed out, it also consists in the right to use the city, to reimagine it and participate in the creation of urban life. But adding to Lefebvre, I'd like to suggest that participation alone will not suffice in overcoming the social, economic, political and environmental hurdles that fracture urban geographies. The concept of participation here must be premised upon trust. As we participate in the creation of our city, do we trust one another? Do we trust one another enough to work together and to embrace the metropolitan outskirts, the rural periphery, as well as other cities and all the different stakeholders that have been referred to today? Do we trust that one group or individual's vision of the city will be inclusive and flexible for all who live in it, visit it, or pass through it? Do we trust that the vulnerabilities of some will not be taken advantage of by others as they put their imagination and resources to work in recreating the city? On the whole, do we trust ourselves to not just be consumers of urban life, but to actively reimagine and recreate the city along radically different lines of sociality to what currently is the case? For in the end, we might be emboldened to produce change, but in the absence of trust, solidarities will not emerge, and without solidarity, there will be no right to the city to speak of. Thank you.
We think it is a bulk issue, but it is being worked on. So we are hopeful that Charles Graves' PowerPoint presentation will be projected.
Yours also is a...
Well, I only have 2 slides, and if I can look at the monitor, I can read those 2 and then come back and sit here.
Okay, so
they can keep working on it.
Do that. Okay.
Unless I can stay up there. I will say I spent 4 hours on one of my graphics, so maybe I can email it to y'all.
Maybe it'll come back on.
Yeah, maybe. My name is Marisa Zapata, and I'm an assistant professor in the School of Planning. I think, like Adrian, I am not in a position to speak with great authority about Over-the-Rhine specifically. I've only been living in the city of Cincinnati for 2 years, and so I'm still getting to know this city a lot. One of the things that I loved about the city when I first moved here was its urban fabric. And as a planner, this city is a dream city. There is so much opportunity here that you can do to cultivate a true urban environment and put the city on the map. What was equally heartbreaking was seeing the disinvestment in the city. And that was, of course, particularly the case when going through Over-the-Rhine and in seeing what had happened in the community. What I want to do today is I want to give some facts. I was here for the morning session, and I feel like we haven't quite spelled out some very specific things about Over-the-Rhine that are interesting and powerful. I then want to raise some questions